Well, hey everyone, welcome back to The Able Gardener. You know, with the holidays behind us and the new year or the new growing season ahead of us, I'd like to continue my series for The Very Beginning Gardener. What I like to do is talk about the different ingredients that may make up the soil that you buy, all the different containers you could use to start your seeds in, and then we'll just end by starting some seeds or planting some seeds. So let me start by talking about soil and the different ingredients that may be in the soil that you buy. One of the first products that may be in your potting soil or your seed starting mix is just decomposed wood products. And there's no soil in this at all, just decomposed wood that's been ground up very fine. It's perfectly good for starting your seeds in and even getting it to the seedling stage, because this does have a small amount of fertilizer added to it. But after your seedlings get to a certain size, you will want to add your own fertilizer. The next ingredient that's not only in a lot of your potting soils, but is one of the main ingredients in seed starter mixes, and that's peat moss. Peat moss is a rather fluffy ingredient, adds to, well, the fluffiness and the texture of your soil, also holds in moisture. A lot of times people will start their seeds directly in peat moss, although I don't like to do that because it has a tendency to dry out rather fast. So I like to use this if it's in addition to the rest of the soil. Another ingredient that may be in some of your potting soils or your seed starter mixes is coconut coir. It's become very popular in the last 5 to 10 years. Like peat moss, it will add to the structure of the soil, also helps to retain moisture, but unlike peat moss, it actually retains a little more moisture, and you can start your seeds in this without fear of them drying out too quickly. The next thing you'll probably see in some of your potting soils and maybe your seed starter mixes would be vermiculite or perlite. It also helps to break up the soil, especially in clay soils, and also helps to retain moisture. These ingredients make up most of your potting soils and your seed starter mixes, with one exception being the coconut coir. Being more expensive, a lot of the soil companies leave it out of their mixes. Well, now let's look at just a few of the many containers you can use to start your seeds. Well, let's start by looking at the peat pellet. The peat pellet is a way to start your seeds without the added expense of buying a bag of soil. The peat pellets come dehydrated and are usually about 1/4 of an inch tall. Follow the directions on the pack as to how much warm water you should add to the tray to rehydrate the pellets. Within 5 to 10 minutes, pellets will reach anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches tall. They come in various sizes, but this is the size I like to start my seeds. The peat pellet, of course, is filled with peat. Comes with a netting that surrounds it, holding it together. The netting is supposed to be biodegradable, even though I've pulled up plants before and the netting has still been around my roots, and it's looked like it has hindered the roots from growing. So it does come with a perforation down the netting, and I just like to gently remove this before I put my plants in the garden. And here's a peat pellet that's a little bit smaller. When rehydrated, it's only about 1 inch by 1 inch. And all of the peat trays will come with a clear lid so you can hold in the warmth and humidity. And in addition to peat pellets, you may also see coconut coir pellets in the store. Now let's take a look at some of the containers you will need soil for. And one of those would be the peat pot. It's 100% peat molded into a pot, has a little hole in the bottom, and these are biodegradable. They will disintegrate after you put your plant in the garden. Another container that's similar to the peat pot is what I call the cow pie pot. It's made out of 100% cow manure, and I like these a little better because I just feel like as my plant is growing in the pot, it's also using some of the cow manure as fertilizer. Another thing you may see around the store in the garden area is the tray that just contains little pots. These are 3-inch pots. I like these to start my peppers and tomatoes in because I don't have to transfer them or transplant them as they're getting bigger. This is a pretty good size to get to a transplant stage and then put it directly into the garden. And another thing you can pick up at the store, or maybe you have one in your yard, is just a regular flower pot. One reason that this is nice to start your seeds in, if you're starting something like herbs, you can start your seeds in here and have the herbs grow, and you don't have to do any transplanting. And another container that you can either buy online or at some stores is just a nice 6 or 12 cell pot. This one happens to come with a tray and a lid for humidity and warmth, and that's perfect for starting a lot of little seeds in, say tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, any plant like that can be started in here. It will need to be transplanted fairly soon because these are small cells. And another container that's very handy is the 6-cell pot. I think I kept this one from the nursery. It came with flowers in it, something like that. But you can find practically any size container you want to start your seeds in online. Go to Amazon.com or some other plant container store. And some of the containers we have around the house that we can start seeds in. Kids like to use egg crate containers to start their seeds. The only thing I would say is this area for the soil is so small that these tend to dry out rather quickly. So just keep your eye on the moisture in the soil of your egg crates. Now something else from my kitchen is the chicken roaster pan or tray. It's a nice hard plastic tray, so I'll be able to use it many times. And I like these trays to start my cold crop in, like my lettuce, spinach, cabbage, things like that. So those are really great. And then it also comes, of course, with the tall dome because it has a chicken in it. So I've got my humidity dome on there and I'm good to go. Some other containers from the kitchen that I like to use and either to start seeds in or to transplant them into. These are just a couple of clear containers from the deli. And of course I've got tons of yogurt containers because I love yogurt. I eat a lot of yogurt, so those come in really handy to transplant my seeds or transplant my plants into. They make really nice containers for that. Of course, all of these plastic containers, you need to put some drain holes in the bottom. A few more containers from the nursery, your 1-gallon pot, and then some little square 4-inch pots. Anything you can find, keep it on hand. You can plant your seeds in there or transplant your seedlings into. And last but not least, the ever popular red Solo Cup. The Solo Cup has been popular with gardeners for quite a long time now, and these are great for transplants or to start your seeds in. Well, it's definitely not all the containers you can come up with to plant seeds in or to put transplants into, but use your imagination, look around your house and your yard. You'll probably come up with all kinds of containers you can use. But let's go now into just a few minutes of planting some seeds. Another thing that I like to have around is some kind of a planting tray or container, and this is just a small storage container. That way I can dump out some of my soil, plant my seeds, or transplant something, and I have it all contained and I'm not making a large mess. Well, this is the way I plant my seeds. You guys can plant your seeds any way you want to, of course, but I just thought I'd show you the way I like to. I make sure that my soil is fairly moist. If it will hold a dirt clod together fairly well, but then break apart, that's a good amount of moisture for me. So I just fill up my container 2/3 to 3/4 of the way full. Pat it down just very gently. You want your roots to be able to grow into the soil. And I am going to be planting some squash seeds. They're underneath the container here. I'm going to be planting a couple of squash seeds, and it's always good to plant more than one seed just in case one doesn't come up. So it doesn't matter which way these seeds go. I'm just going to be laying them on their sides. And another thing that is a good idea to invest in is just a sprayer that you can put water in. Of course, I got this one from Lowe's. And I like to spray down the soil around the seeds and spray some water on the seeds. And then I'm just going to cover them up. As to how deep, it says on the back of the package. So on the back of the squash package, it says to plant them about 1/2 of an inch under the ground. So there's about 1/2 an inch right there. And I'm going to water this down a little bit more. Now, I'm not going to water it with a big jug right away, anything that puts a lot of water onto the soil, because no doubt it will just pour down into the soil. The soil will roll around and my seeds may come up or go somewhere else. So that's the right amount of moisture for now. My seeds can absorb the water and start growing. So also don't forget to label your seeds or your containers as to what seed you planted in and the date. If you start potting a lot of seeds and you have your containers sitting around, you may forget what you planted in the containers. So I'm going to put a little label on my squash. This is just a piece to a mini blind. If you have any old mini blinds, don't throw them away. They make really good labels. You can also buy the pre-made labels from Walmart or Home Depot, any nursery you may have around. So let me label my squash. So I've got the label to my squash. Now I can go ahead and set that aside somewhere. Well, now I'm going to start some bok choy. I like to start my smaller seeds into a little container like this. This is just something from lunch meat from the kitchen, and it's great to keep all your containers from the kitchen that are plastic and, well, are reusable. So I filled this up 2/3 of the way full. I'm going to get my bok choy seeds, which are extremely tiny. Actually, they're stuck to my gloves. And I'm going to sprinkle those across the top of the soil. And I've got a few more here. Okay, that's probably enough. I don't want to put too many seeds or too many small seeds in a container like this, because then the container seems to get crowded. I can thin them out, of course, but I don't like killing little plants. So I'm going to just sprinkle gently a little bit of soil on top of the bok choy, not very much, because on the back of the container of seeds, it says that you can plant either on top of the soil or just right underneath. So just going to put a little bit of soil on top and then spray that down and get it good and moist. Now, I think I mentioned a minute ago, I think my soil is a little bit too dry. So when I put it in a container like this, I can pour some water on the soil in this container. Not this container, but this container. I can pour some water in here, leave it overnight, and the soil will absorb the water, then just mix it around. But this is good enough for right now. So I've got that mixed around. Got my bok choy sign I'm going to put in there, and that's good to go. I'm going to put it over in the windowsill. Well, now I'm going to plant in a peat pellet that's been rehydrated. This is just a little yogurt container. And all you need to do is find out how deep your seeds need to go and just pick the soil gently just to get it elevated a little bit. And I'm going to be planting a couple of okra seeds in here. Here are my okra seeds. I'm going to put at least 2, just in case one doesn't come up. I could also put 3 and then thin them out. Here, I'll put a 3rd one in there. Get it down in there. And you don't need extra soil for this. Just cover it up a little bit with the peat that is in the peat pellet. And then if the peat pellet is a little bit dry, you can spray water on that. Now, as for making your label and writing on your label, most of the time I use a Sharpie Extreme. And that's supposed to be fade resistant. And then sometimes I'll just use a dark crayon. So there is a label for my okra. And I'll go get that on some heat in the sunny window. Well, everyone, that's it for the Very Beginning Gardener Part 3. Thanks for spending the afternoon with me. If you like my video, please hit like. If you like my channel, please subscribe. Other than that, I will talk to you guys later. Happy gardening. Bye-bye.